I have a I have a lot to go over today, so I'm going to talk pretty quickly. Feel free to leave any questions you have in the Q&A, and we'll have a Q&A at the end. I'll get to as many questions as I can, I promise. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen and dive right in. Okay.
And while Mariah is getting set up, hi guys, I'm Lizzie from Creatively. You'll hear me chime in with some of your questions. So Mariah, I will interject when it is time, but just wanted to let everyone not be scared of this other random voice.
Perfect. Thanks, Lizzie. All right. So as you all know, this class is all about how to freelance. And before we get started, I want to take 2 minutes to just introduce myself and share a bit about my story. So hello, my name is Mariah Althoff. I am a design school reject turned six-figure freelancer who now coaches other creatives how to leave their 9-to-5 jobs and fearlessly build their own successful freelance businesses. So here's a quick story about how I got here. I actually started my graphic design career as the lead designer at a print and design company where I worked for about a year until I was recruited to a very corporate-y company that I, to be honest, didn't love. Both jobs had their upsides, but to be honest, I was mostly just overworked, underpaid, and I didn't feel like I had a ton of room for growth. Let me know in the comments if any of you guys feel this way right now. I was just really ready to go freelance. I knew I wanted to freelance someday, but I also felt like I needed more experience or I needed to be older in order to be taken more seriously. Fortunately / unfortunately, I just a few months into that job, I actually was let go from the company because they were starting to go downhill. And that was the moment that I realized it was really time for me to just take my career into my own hands. I was ready for my bank account to really reflect my actions and not the actions of somebody else. I think society really tells us that having a 9-to-5 is a lot more secure, but actually getting laid off and seeing several of my family members get laid off throughout my lifetime really made me reconsider this. So despite the lack of savings that I had, I decided it was just now or never. And I went right in. I started when I was just 23 and I haven't looked back since. So over the last 7 years, freelancing truly has changed my life, which is why I've been so passionate about teaching it to others. I was able to grow a 6-figure business. I healed from a chronic illness. I pre-pandemic traveled monthly. I worked with some of the largest companies in the entire world, all while working 20 to 30 hours a week max. I've now shifted my entire business to empower other creatives to confidently start and grow their freelance businesses so that you can have this same kind of freedom that I have earned. And I share my story only to prove to you that if I can do it, so can you. I promise you, I am not special. I am a self-taught designer. I was literally rejected from the design program at my school. I don't have a business degree. I literally had no idea what I was doing when I first started at 23 years old. And I had barely a year of corporate experience before I went full-time freelance. So I just share this to know, for you to know that it is so possible for you too. Now, my experience has really taught me that it takes 2 things to truly start and scale a freelance business. It takes understanding the foundations and the systems of freelancing, while also in combination with taking fearless action and really developing massive self-trust and consistently stepping outside of your comfort zone. And today I really want to dive into the foundations of freelancing. So I've actually broken these foundations into 3 distinct steps. So the first is showcasing your skills. This means setting up your portfolio, defining who you work with and what you do for them, displaying your expertise through your work, testimonials, experience, etc. Step 2 is all about getting visible. So this is where you really show up for your business. And this is often where that fearlessness and stepping outside of your comfort zone really comes in. You get to let people know what you do, why you do it, and why they should work with you. This is networking, this is marketing, all those things. Most creatives avoid this step like the plague. And some of you might be silently raising your hand right now too, because getting visible means that we can no longer just hide behind our screens and let our perfectionism keep us stuck, right? Typically, my clients come to me wanting to go straight from step 1 to step 3. But step 3 actually doesn't matter if nobody knows you exist, right? So step 3 is all about setting up your systems. This is creating client workflows. It's setting up your business programs and software. It's implementing behind the scenes software and systems, that kind of thing. Again, step 3 is important, and we're going to go over some of that today, but it's more important to implement these steps as you gain paying clients. The best part about freelancing is that you literally get to get paid to learn and grow in your business every single day. And as long as you have a way for clients to contact you after they've seen your work, the rest of the systems can be implemented as you go and perfected with time. So today I want to start with the bulk of step 1, which is building a profitable portfolio. So potential clients don't care what your degree is in, what prior experience you have, etc. They care if you're good at what you do and if you can solve their problem, right? So show them you know how to do this by showcasing your skill set. Show people why they should be working with you. What do your clients need to see from you in order to know you're good at what you do and that they can trust you with their business? Show that visually as often as you possibly can so that they can picture the same results for themselves within their own businesses. So for example, graphic designers, this is what I know deeply. Display your work that your ideal client would want to hire you for. So if you want to be building websites, show off websites. Don't display random work from college or past jobs if it's not relevant to your ideal client. Make sure your portfolio is just so directed to your ideal client. Display projects you want to be booking and use mock-ups to then display your work in a real world setting so that clients can really envision what something that currently is just digital on their screen would look like in real life, and they can kind of envision it for their business more. Social media managers, some ideas for you guys would be take before and after screenshots of your clients' accounts to showcase the transformation you provide. Display examples of captions you've written, show off impressive analytics from client accounts, include successful social media campaigns you've led. And finally, for copywriters, something you can do is include screen grabs and links to web pages or blog posts you've written. You could share client results that came from the copy you've written. I hired a copywriter specifically because of her testimonials from her past clients. Include links to Google Docs of email campaigns you've written, or showcase screenshots of an ad you created copy for. Now, if you don't have any relevant client experience, or if you've signed like NDAs in the past and you can't display that work on your portfolio, that's fine. Make up fake clients and produce real world work for them. That is totally fine. As long as that work relates to your ideal client, that's all that matters. So you'll do this by creating a fake client that's similar to the types of clients you want to be working with. You can then take full creative control and make sure that you're producing some of your very best work. And you can even, if you want, you could just donate your time to a nonprofit you support and gain relevant portfolio experience that way too, if you don't have the energy to like create a brand new fake client to design for, write for, whatever. No matter what, potential clients just don't care about how many other clients you worked with. They care about whether you can help them. And so using your portfolio to show them that through sample work, whether it's a true human that you've done work for or not, just quite literally doesn't matter. Also, if possible, include client testimonials. Social proof is just huge for gaining a potential client's trust and envisioning or in positioning yourself as an expert in your field. And if you, again, don't have any client, like true client experience or any testimonials that you could use, you could ask past employers or past coworkers to just speak to your work ethic and display those on your website in the meantime. Now let's jump into step 2, finding clients. This is probably why a lot of you are here. So you have your portfolio up and running, but let's talk about actually finding real world clients to work with. This is when you have to start getting visible and showing off that portfolio you just worked so hard to put together, right? So I always say, if you're just starting freelancing, start with your personal network, because that's going to be the easiest and quickest way that you're probably going to get at least one to 3 clients. Think of who you might know that you could be reaching out to and just letting them know that you're freelancing now, what services you offer, who you work with. Think about like past employers or past work connections. friends and family, friends of friends, your parents, coworkers. Who do you know that's just super well connected? I guarantee you know a couple people who probably at least know somebody else who might be able to just open that door for you. Next, I want you to begin establishing at least one short-term and one long-term lead generation strategy. Let's talk about what that is. So short-term lead generation strategies are those that can get you clients quickly. They usually require more effort right away, but they're easier to get a client directly from that input. So for example, this would be like referrals or setting up some sort of referral system, networking, applying to jobs through Creatively. They have so many jobs every week that go up on that site. It's crazy. Developing strategic partnerships, posting a lot in Facebook groups and just letting people know what you do or being really helpful in groups that your audience is hanging out in, running paid ads, guest speaking, hosting an event, getting featured on a podcast, things like that, that's going to get you in front of eyeballs quickly and efficiently.
Now, sorry, quick question. Yes. Some audience members were wondering if you could just explain what a non-disclosure agreement, or better known as an NDA, precisely is.
Yeah, so often if you work with like high profile clients or maybe at your full-time job, you might have had to sign an NDA, which means that you just can't show off that you've done that work necessarily. So like, for example, I've done work with Walmart, but I can't put that on my portfolio because it's protected and under their name. So just making sure that the work you are showcasing for real life people is cool for you to put on the internet and put your name on is all you need. Does that make sense? Let me know if you need more clarification. I'm happy to keep going. Okay, long-term lead generation strategies. So behind the scenes, I want you to start working on 1 to 2 long-term lead generation strategies. These are strategies that require time to build up effectively, but then can live on and work for you the longer that they're implemented. So great examples of this are Pinterest. Pins can live for so long. SEO, I get anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 viewers from SEO a month, all from work I did 5 years ago, right? Blogging, that kind of goes with SEO. Creatively, you can build relationships with brands, be messaging them. It's an awesome platform for more long-term lead generation strategies in that realm as well. This would also be Instagram. Instagram's kind of a slow burn, but like once you get there and build up that following, it's worth it, right? YouTube, I still get inquiries from videos I've made 3 to 5 years ago. Like that content just lives on. TikTok, same thing. LinkedIn, makes sense. So a little more long-term strategies that might not get you a client right away, but will work for you in the future. Now, I just want to let you know, do not stretch yourself too thin here. It's really easy to feel like you need to be at all the places all the time, all at once. And that's actually just going to make you kind of crappy at all the things. So I recommend getting really good at 1 to 2 strategies that you really love and that will work for you. So do those until you have like a really, really good system going, and then you can add on a new platform. Don't spread yourself too thin. It's not worth it. Get really good at 1 to 2 things that build that traffic, get that momentum going, find you those clients, and then you can add on as you go. Now let's move on to step 3, our favorite part, getting paid. Like all of the steps, there's so much I could cover here, but for step 3, which is setting up your systems, I just really want to go over how to get paid and how to do so efficiently and effectively. So first and foremost, let's talk about banking and bookkeeping. I know this is boring, but it's important. So a few best practices that will really help if you implement them right away are having a separate bank account for your business specifically. So this doesn't have to be a fancy business account if you don't want it to be that, but just open another bank account in the platform or in the bank you're already using and just call it your business account. Now, this is where all income goes into for your business and where all expenses come out of for your business. Then when you want to pay yourself, whenever that is, you take it out of that account and put it in your personal account. You will thank me later. And by later, I mean tax time that you did that, because it's gonna be so much easier to track your business expenses and how much you made that year, et cetera. Now, as a freelancer, we're also responsible for paying your own taxes. So I highly recommend, in addition to that just regular checking account that you're setting aside for your business, I also recommend opening a separate savings account for your business too, that you put 30% of every paycheck into that savings account, and then you just don't touch it until it's time to pay taxes, okay? This is going to be really helpful so that you have money when you actually have to pay taxes. A lot of freelancers in their first year get to April and they're like, oh, I'm sorry, I owe how much? So put that money away. You don't even have to look at it, and just know that it's there for when you need it. Sometimes you'll have extra. Amazing. Pay yourself a little bonus. I also highly recommend that when you first start your business, find a CPA and meet with them. Just like find a local one or somebody online and have a Zoom call with them. They're going to be so helpful in just letting you know like what you can write off, what you need to be tracking. Let them know what your business is. They're going to set you up with so many helpful tips. I did this a few months into my business, and I was night and day ahead of some of my peers because I just had a better idea of what I needed to be doing financially to set me up for success for tax time. You're also going to need to pay estimated quarterly taxes, which a CPA will help you figure out what that is as well. So now that we have our bank account set up, let's talk about how to actually get paid, right? So before you do anything, I want to make sure that your client has signed a contract. You need to be protected. You need to make sure that that happens before you even start working for them. And I also really recommend taking a deposit or a down payment before you start working, just in case on the off chance a client ghosts you, something goes awry, whatever, you at least have that down payment. And then I highly recommend having an online platform to accept payments. The key here is that you just really want to make getting paid as easy as possible for them. Use an online platform to accept payments. Don't make clients have to figure out where to send you a check or what your Venmo is. Just use an online processor. It's so worth it. Creatively Pay actually is launching. Lizzie's going to put like where you can sign up for the wait list, but it's an amazing option for this because it actually allows you to get paid the same day rather than wait like net 30 or whatever it is on your payment terms that clients typically pay their invoice. You don't have to wait 30 days to get paid. You can just get paid same day, which is incredible. Not only is it easy for them to pay you, but it's also easy for you to get paid quickly, which we love. So thank you Creatively for adding that feature. And then finally, I want to make sure that you get the full/final payment before you deliver all of your final deliverables. So for example, if you're a graphic designer, show them what the final file will look like, but don't send them the like high res print ready version or whatever that is for you, or all the final logo files or whatever the end deliverables are. Don't send those until you have the final payment. Now, last but not least, I want to cover how to price your services because I get asked this all the time. So there are 3 standard ways of pricing your services as a freelancer, and finding out which one works best for you is key. So first and foremost, there's hourly. So this is where you set an hourly rate and you let your clients know an estimate of how long you expect their project will take you. This option works really great if you're just starting out and you need to really get a handle on project timeframes and working with clients. It's also the easiest and most transparent way of pricing and implementing your pricing. What you charge will depend on your experience level, your industry, your cost of living, et cetera. Like this can range so much, anywhere from like $50 an hour to $200 plus an hour. So that is really dependent on you, but this is just a really easy, straightforward way of pricing. And if you're just starting out, I highly recommend just starting with hourly to make your life easier. Then once you gain enough experience and you feel confident in your pricing, I recommend moving to a per project pricing model. So this doesn't penalize you for being faster at your job, and it just still allows you to earn more an hour, right? So as you're calculating your flat rate for your project, be sure to account for revisions. So I typically in my proposal will tell people 1 or 2, whatever you want to include, rounds of revisions are included in this base price. If additional revisions are needed, it'll be at a whatever per hour rate. That's key. And then things to think through when you're pricing this way is, what can your ideal client afford for this type of project? What do they expect to pay for this type of project? How long do you think it'll actually take you? So this is why this is a good pricing method after you've done hourly for a little bit and you have a little bit more of that information just from past client work to be able to do this more effectively as you've gotten faster at your craft. Now, third is value-based pricing. So this is where you price your services based on the value the project will bring the client. So this is the highest, most kind of, I guess, advanced form of pricing. So once you've kind of graduated from the per project pricing model, this is going to be more ideal because you'll know your client's pain points, results, and the overall transformation your work provides just a lot more deeply, and you'll be able to back up your higher prices because of this. So if you're using value-based pricing, think through, how much is this worth to the client? Will it bring them more business? If so, how much? What problems are you solving for the client? How much is it worth to your client for you to solve this problem, right? So this is how you can charge, $10,000, $20,000 for websites, things like that, is the value that it brings to the client, not how many hours you're putting into it. Now, I know that there can be so many different systems and behind the scenes of like, how do I run a freelance business effectively? I get questions about this all the time. So I actually just have a free download on my website that I wanted to make sure you guys knew about. You can grab it at mariahaltoff.com/freelance-biz-tools. This is just going to go through all of my recommended resources for, where to find a contract, bookkeeping, project management tools, and beyond. It's literally 8 pages long and filled to the brim, and it's totally free. I wanted you guys to have access to it if this is something that's kept you stuck as you start your freelance business. Now, before we get into the Q&A, here's where you can find me online. I'm most active on TikTok, but I'm also on Instagram, where I'd actually genuinely love if you DM'd me or even take a picture of this workshop class on your phone and post it to Instagram stories and tag me and creatively and let people know that you were here, and I will pop into your DMs and say hello and just thank you for joining. Also, if you're just craving more one-on-one support and accountability, I do have a few freelance coaching spots open as well in the coming months and would love to talk to you about those as well. So just say hello in the DMs. I love connecting with you guys. Be sure to DM me on Instagram though, because TikTok DMs are garbage. So, okay, now let's get into the Q&A. I would love to hear what questions you guys have for me. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and hop in the chat.
Hey, Mariah. We have quite a few questions for you. I'm happy to read some off. Thank you so much for all of that insight, by the way, on just getting started. And I know that was really helpful in terms of insight and like initials, like just starting out. And now we can dive a little bit deeper. Some folks have been asking specifically about getting new clients. We had someone ask, what strategies do you recommend for cold client outreach? DMs, or is there something else that you would recommend?
If you're going to cold outreach to clients, you could do the DMs. However, as somebody who gets a lot of cold DMs that I typically ignore, I don't necessarily recommend it. I recommend building a relationship with that client or potential client in some capacity before you just hop in their DMs and say, hey, here's what I do. Even if that's like admiring their work on Instagram, commenting, replying to their Instagram stories, or if you're on some other platform, Facebook groups and pages, LinkedIn, TikTok, whatever social media platform. I know creatively you can message brands. So building that relationship is actually going to allow you to pitch way easier and way more effectively. And it's not going to make you feel like super gross about it. I'm all about marketing in ways that make you feel not icky and not like a salesman. That's just not my move. And I don't think that that's how people like to be sold to anyway. So if you can find a way that feels really good to you to build a relationship with them in some capacity so that they know you exist before you just slide into their DMs or shoot them an email or whatever, that's key.
Thank you so much, Mariah. Another question we have, which is related, is from Ginny. They ask, what do you look for in a client? And are there any red or green flags you've learned to look out for?
Yes, so many. First and foremost, I do want to just say what you're going to find the more you freelance is that even when you feel like all of your systems are on lock, there's no way like crappy clients are going to sneak into your world because you've got a contract that's ironclad or whatever. There's still going to be somebody that eventually like sneaks right in there. And instead of being mad at that client, use it as a learning experience to be like, okay, what do I need to tighten in my onboarding process, in my whatever marketing system, like who I'm like my messaging, who I'm talking to, whatever. Use that as a learning experience to just tweak things going forward, because it's going to happen no matter how much you try to avoid it. Unfortunately, business is just like one giant lesson, which I love, but it does come with its things. So, red flags with clients, I would say, are ones that ask you if you can give them a discount or are like really resistant to your prices. I promise you that the clients that want the cheapest deal are the ones that are going to run you ragged until you want to pull your hair out. Making sure that you set really solid boundaries with your clients, no matter how good or kind of crappy they are, is really important too. Because if you give them your phone number, like they might text you at midnight, and that's something you probably aren't going to know until you're too far in. So making sure that you have these really solid boundaries in place before you even start with them is going to be really helpful. What are some other red flags? Ones that just think that they know exactly what they want and they just want you to execute it for them. I love clients who treat you like the expert, and that's why they're hiring you, is because they can't do it themselves and they know that you know better. Obviously, it can be a collaborative effort, but if they're just like, here's exactly what I want, I just need you to do that for me. For example, like people like literally like sketch me a logo and then they just need somebody to execute it. That's just not the kind of client I want to have, because it's not going to have the strategy. It's not going to give them the transformation that they really need. Again, if you're a graphic designer, I'm just speaking to my industry specifically. People will come to me and be like, I just want a logo. And I'm like, well, I actually don't do just logos. I do full branding packages, because just a logo actually isn't going to be helpful for you. A full branding suite is actually going to bring you the transformation you're looking for. And if they're like, no, I literally just want a logo, then like, that's not my client. So it's going to be kind of something that you're going to learn through experience, specifically in your niche. But finding clients who just really look up to you and trust your expertise are going to be just your favorite clients to work with, and ones that aren't trying to get you to charge cheaper prices and are just happy to pay the down payment on time or whatever, are going to be just literal angels. So those are my biggest red and green flags.
Thanks so much, Mariah. We actually had a couple questions that all center around how to best network effectively. How would you go about it? What has worked for you? And where do you typically do it?
Okay, so networking for me actually is really how I've grown my business, especially when I first started. I have really grown my business on the internet, which is why I've been able to like travel the world and whatever, because nobody's expecting me to like meet them for coffee in person. It's all on Zoom or whatever. So I highly recommend making sure that you're not just building a local network. And if you are, that's fine, but don't make it something that like has to be an in-person experience. When I first started freelancing, because I came from the corporate type world, kind of for like 14 whole months, I thought that I had to go to networking events. And here's the thing is every time I went to a networking event, I just kind of wanted to die a little bit. I hated them so much until one day I like stopped for gas on the way there. And I thought to myself, why am I going to this networking event and doing things in my business that I absolutely hate? Like, certainly there's a different way. Like networking, like in-person networking like that is great for some people, but it did not fit me, which is why I am such a strong believer in finding what lights you up in the realm of marketing your business, because what that is for me is going to look totally different for you, and that's fine. Like anymore, I'm like all over TikTok, and most people I talk to are like, absolutely not. You know what I mean? So whereas I don't love Instagram, and so many of my peers are like, I get all my clients from Instagram. So it is so dependent on where you enjoy spending your time, who you want to be working with, and where those people are hanging out. If that requires like the more traditional networking, then it just does. Otherwise, it really is as simple as building relationships with people who are in like the realm of possibility of people you might want to work with, or like I call them super connectors. So like, who do you know that's really well connected that can just put you in contact with people? You can then set up referral systems. You could even partner with, say you're a copywriter, find a web designer and let them know that every time they design a website, if they bring you on to write the copy, you'll give them 10% of the job or something. Building really like just deeper, more interpersonal relationships with people, I have found to be much more effective than like handing out my business card at a networking event. And I think that that's kind of more of the future of networking anyway, is just building one-on-one relationships, because people, when they really like you, they want you to succeed, and they're going to tell their friends about you. If they know somebody who needs a social media manager, they're going to be like, hey, I know a girl, here's her Instagram, like maybe check her out. So it really is just building like one-on-one connections and letting that grow. I have like Zoom coffee dates with strangers from the internet all the time, just because I really like having internet friends. So that's how I network, is I just like build really strong individual relationships, and have built up relationships with people online by commenting on their work and sending them DMs and reacting to their stories or whatever. So let me know if that was helpful.
Yeah. Thanks, Mariah. Another question that I'm seeing a lot of traction on is people are wondering how they go about project like scope creeps. So for those who are unfamiliar with that terminology, that is when you have agreed upon scope, but of like what you're going to do for a specific rate or cost. And then suddenly it turns out that you're working more hours than you think, or like you're adding in a couple other tasks and things that you didn't anticipate initially, but are doing. So we have people ask, how do you kind of address that in a professional and kind way, and especially if there's any pushback?
Yeah. So this is where having like a really strong, it's strong boundaries, and B, it's having really clear communication right from the get-go. So it's having a solid proposal that states what the scope of the project actually is, and then having a clause either in your proposal or your contract or wherever, that if it goes above and beyond that, here's the hourly rate it'll be at, or that prices will adjust accordingly. And when clients are like, hey, can we actually like add a blog page to my website or whatever, I just say, absolutely, can totally do that for you, because that does go over our initial scope. Here's the additional investment that is going to be added to complete that. Is that okay with you? And if they're like, yeah, great, go for it, perfect. And if they're like, actually, that's out of my budget right now, no problem. Let me know in a few months if that changes, and I'm happy to jump back in and add that for you after time goes on. So it's just letting them know, here's the boundary. You don't have to be like a, I don't know, you don't have to be rude about it. You just have to be like, hey, this is what's up. Happy to do that for you. Here's what that's going to mean for both of us going forward. So knowing what your boundaries are before you get started is key. And that's kind of what I mean too, where you're like, you're gonna make mistakes like that as you go, and you're gonna learn for them. And sometimes you're gonna have to put your head down and do the extra thing because you didn't set that boundary in the first place. And that's just part of the game. But you will learn that boundaries is key.
Thanks, Mariah. And kind of two related questions that are separate but tie into that. One is kind of a quick one. We've had a couple people ask about any references for writing a contract. Like, do you use any platforms that have templates or anything to start?
Yeah, so for contracts, in that like freelance business tools and resources guide that I put up, that has a couple different recommendations. So there's like two that I know of. I know there's plenty more online that literally make templates for creative entrepreneurs and freelancers, that it literally has like your information here, your name here, your address here. You just fill it out and it has everything you need in it. I recommend investing in one of those. They're usually a couple $100 and it's so worth it. That's so worth the money. So you don't need to get like a lawyer to write you a custom one. There are so many templates online, but you do usually have to pay for them.
Thanks, Mariah. Another question we had is, related to that former about scope creeping, is I think sometimes freelancers, and myself included as a former freelancer, is imposter syndrome. Like, I think really defending and knowing your worth. And that was a question that we also had submitted, is how do you deal with imposter syndrome to really, understand your value and your worth?
Yes. So this is huge. One of the things that I typically tell my clients that helps, I think, a little bit is remembering that whoever you are looking up to, I promise you, also has imposter syndrome about somebody else. There is not a single person, especially in the creative field, that doesn't feel that. So it's completely normal, and it doesn't mean you're not qualified. It just means that you haven't gained that self-trust and are looking for outside validation and comparing yourself to other people. So if that's happening, try to change your thought around the imposter syndrome. Say there's somebody you really look up to online. Notice what you can take from them and what you can learn from them and what you can have be inspired from them and help you get better. Because usually if you have imposter syndrome, it's somebody who's a little further along, but you can't compare yourself to somebody who's been doing this for 5 years. Like, that's just not fair for either of you. And I promise you that in 5 years, you will be leaps and bounds ahead of where you are now too. So changing that imposter syndrome from I'm not good enough to look how good I can be. How can what can I do to make myself better? But not letting that stop you from putting yourself out there. I promise you, there are people out there who are far less qualified and far less talented, charging more than you do online right now, simply because they believe in themselves more, not because you're not talented enough. So I think that was my little pep talk.
I second all of that. Again, somewhat related to kind of the contract template conversation too. What are some key important things that you would recommend adding in a contract that might not be obvious, but that you've learned over time are musts?
One thing that I did end up adding to my contract was having a time period that clients needed to get feedback back to me, if they had any at all. Because it would be really frustrating when say I sent work to a client and it took them 3 weeks to get them get revisions back to me, it's really hard for me to manage upcoming projects when that project is taking 3 times longer than it needed to. And so I think I would set I think my contract says like 3 to 4 business days that they need to get back to me. And if that doesn't happen, I have the right to charge a project stall fee, add that to their invoice. And then when they're ready, I can pick it back up when there's availability in my schedule. That has been really helpful in like getting clients to give like a little kick in the butt to get you the revisions and make time for the project that they're probably paying you a lot of money to do. But sometimes they just like get busy and they're like, oh, I'll get to that later. And then they just don't, and you're just waiting. And which also means you probably just aren't getting paid as soon. So having boundaries around how long they have to get back to you in order to keep their secured spot on your calendar is really nice. I'm trying to think what else I maybe have added. I can't think of anything.
I think kind of related to your feedback one that I think could make sense would be if there's additional rounds of feedback that you give beyond like a set number that you can charge more. So kind of related to what you're saying, if they're actually giving almost too much feedback, you can't be spinning your wheels and doing 300 rounds. And this comes from my personal agency experience where people would want to remove a comma, add a trademark, remove it. And then you're like, okay, that was 6 rounds.
Yes.
So hopefully that's somewhat helpful for people too. But thank you. Another question we are getting from people, actually, we can do kind of a rapid fire round if that's cool with you. They're more, I think in my head that they're more brief, but maybe you'll disagree. We had a couple questions on taxes. Do you have a suggested bank or like type of account that you recommend for people to use when they're starting to freelance?
When I first started, and this is not financial advice because I don't know what I'm talking about in that regard, but when I first started, I literally just I use Ally for my like regular accounts, most of them. And I just added a second checking and savings account to my like personal Ally bank account. And then I now bank with Chase as like a business account. But the business account I do have to pay for. So it was nice to just have like a normal personal account for now. Once I like had an LLC and all that stuff, I needed to upgrade to a business account. But when I first just started, I just used whatever banking you're currently using should be fine, I think.
Awesome. And then Anatola asked, do you recommend, for example, paying people on TurboTax to figure out freelance taxes or getting a CPA, or kind of what's the best recommended?
I highly recommend getting a CPA. The first year that I used a CPA, I literally sent her a thank you note because she saved me so much stress. And I don't ever care to understand taxes. It's not something I will ever do. And it is my favorite, like $300 to $400 I spend every year. And I tell her that. So I recommend a CPA. If you know how to do tax stuff, then like TurboTax is fine. I have some freelance friends that do it themselves. I will never be one of those people. So it's kind of a personal preference thing, but I've loved my experience with a CPA.
Thank you. Tanner asked, you mentioned earlier that it's important to use a solid payment method, but you mentioned that Venmo might not be a good option. Was there a particular reason why?
I mean, Venmo can be a legitimate option. I do think they're starting, I heard that, I don't know if it's started yet or not. But I do think they're going to start taking payment like fees for business transactions. I think most people that have used Venmo in the past have used it because they don't take fees, but they're going to. So you can use Venmo. That's not a problem. If you do that though, just put it on your invoice and let them know how you want to be paid and what your Venmo handle is. I can't tell you how many invoices I've received. I'm just like, okay, how do you want me to pay you? Like, you want me to Zelle you? You want me to write you a check? You want me to walk you cash? I don't know. So just let them know how you want to be paid.
Patricia also noted, and this is something, it's funny, my team also was talking about this earlier, that Venmo, people are going to have to start submitting tax forms in the US. So just be sure to keep Googling and finding out the latest information if you do plan to use Venmo. In terms of recommendations for CPAs, I saw Anatola had another follow-up question. You can honestly do this online. You can do this on Yelp. You can find good reviews for people to use for those kinds of services locally for you in whatever country you're in.
Yeah.
And then another question we had was, are you set up as an LLC or sole proprietorship, and how do you know when to kind of move into the LLC world?
I am. I did not have an LLC for a few years. I went back and forth about it a lot, but I actually talked with my CPA about whether I needed one for quite a while. And instead of getting an LLC, I just had business insurance. I have business insurance through Hartford, I believe is their name. So that protected me from copyright issues, which felt like really the main thing that I could potentially get sued for. I also, when I first started, didn't have a ton of assets for anybody to come after anyway, so it didn't really feel like a necessity. But once I did, I think it was once I hit the 6-figure mark and was starting to get a lot more visible online and building a bigger presence, I was like, okay, this is probably something I should do. At the same time, I have freelance friends that get an LLC right when they start. So I don't understand legal stuff fully, but that's what I did.
Thanks, Laura. And then separately, we had a question from Raven. She asked, how should you organize or set up your portfolio if you have different services, skill sets, or consider yourself a multidisciplinary artist?
So I typically will recommend you niche down in some capacity. I know some people are I have, for example, my photographer friend, she's I shoot weddings and family portraits. So she does have 2 tabs. So you could have it on your website. I'm I need family photography, I need wedding photography, and then it can take you to a different page with a different portfolio. So that could be an option. But otherwise, for niching down, I recommend picking either an industry, a type of product that you produce, or a general style or aesthetic that can really draw people to you. And that way your portfolio doesn't feel all over the place. I know it's scary niching down, but picking one of those 3 categories can still make it feel broad enough to give you creative room, and you're still going to get requests for jobs that are not directed towards your niche anyway. I promise you that will still happen. But having it narrowed down a bit is going to bring you more clients and more leads because people actually know who you help and how you help them. So either having it very separate so that the right person can go to the right section, or just picking one general niche and getting really good at that and clear with that.
Thanks, Mariah. We also have a couple questions about how to understand your value-based pricing is one that I'm seeing a couple about. Are there any resources for people that can determine a fair rate for themselves at their level or in their medium?
I usually just kind of Google it. I help my clients individually based on where they're at and seeing their work and kind of getting an idea of what I know they could charge, but it can be such a broad number. So I would just recommend Googling what a typical hourly rate for whatever industry you're in is, and depending on who you're working with, what they can afford. If you need to do some market research, this is just, you can just find people that you think you want to be working with, hop on a 10-minute call with them on Zoom, let them know it's pitch free, and just pick their brain about what they would need help with, why they need help. Once you really understand who you're helping, what their pain points are, and what kind of a transformation you can provide for them, it's going to be so much easier to charge your worth and price your services, no matter what pricing model you use, because you're going to be able to speak directly to what they're really looking for. If you're just shooting in the dark, it's going to be a lot harder to charge higher prices, especially in the beginning.
Thanks, Mariah. I know we're actually coming down to our last 6 minutes, so hopefully we can breeze through just a couple more, and I'm going to try to continue to consolidate a couple questions. But a question that we had from both Jason and from Catherine is, what is your biggest challenge kind of in getting visible, especially as the market continues to get increasingly competitive?
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that you're doing to stand out and getting noticed?
So for me personally, TikTok a million times. The reach on that platform is insane. And if it's a platform that you enjoy spending time on and you understand, I highly recommend getting on it because you can just grow so much faster. Most of you that are here from my audience probably found me on TikTok. It's where I get 90% of my clients anymore. However, I also fully believe that as long as it's a platform you love and enjoy creating content for and understand and spend time getting good at, you will find success there. So it really is less about like what's working for that other person and more of what will work for you and kind of trial and error to see what you enjoy. That's going to be key. I spent probably a year trying to get visible on Instagram, but I freaking hate Instagram. So I'm like, why am I doing this? But Instagram works for a lot of people. So it's finding your magic and really amplifying that.
Thanks, Mariah. Other questions that we've received, it's perhaps a faster one. Do you use a specific invoice service or form that you use?
Yeah, right now I use QuickBooks, but I've gone through several. I highly recommend if you're just starting out. I really love FreshBooks because it'll also do your bookkeeping. That's usually my go-to if you're just starting out. But that free guide has a couple options in there as well.
Amazing. This is actually a really interesting one. Someone asked, they are a senior in college right now, and they're wondering if you would recommend working a job like a 9-to-5 before going into freelance.
So while I am really grateful for the experience I got in my 9-to-5, I genuinely don't think it's necessary if you don't want to do it. I think you can still get plenty of experience by just going for it. And I personally know many people who've done that. So I think it kind of depends on your comfort level and what you want to be doing. But if freelance is the ultimate goal, if nothing else, go work a 9-to-5, but start freelancing on the side and building that up as a side hustle. But you don't need experience if you just want to freelance, and you know that.
Awesome. Another question that caught my eye was, how closely do you recommend involving the client in the creative process?
I recommend getting really clear with them, having a really solid like onboarding process, understanding their needs, understanding who their clients are, understanding their brand and the company as a whole will then give you enough information to start the first step of that process. So in graphic design, that's usually like a mood board or something like that. Then I like having check-in points. So I would then send the mood board to the client. Here's the visual direction I'm going in based on these things that we've worked together. Here's why I've made these choices. How does this feel? And usually they're gonna be like, great, makes so much sense to me. And then I'll go on to the next step and I'll check in with them again and be like, how does this feel? Here's why I made these choices. And continuing to do that. So continuing to put yourself in the spot as an expert and explaining the choices you made based on their goals and their business needs is going to be key in them not just totally trampling the project and taking over and being like, actually, this is what I want. And it probably is going to turn out like crap and not be work you want to showcase in your portfolio. So.
Great. And we'll just do one last question before we sign off. This question is from Mars, and they asked, what should I prioritize when starting out in freelance work? And what are, perhaps this is hopefully helpful to elaborate. They asked, what are the best investments, for example, to make when first starting out freelancing services or products?
Okay, if I was going to make like just a couple investments, it would be in some sort of bookkeeping system, because I promise you, if you keep up with your books, it's going to be so much easier at the end of the year. So something like FreshBooks or whatever. If you have the means to join some sort of online course or program or work with a coach, especially if you're just like starting a side hustle or something and you have some income coming in already and you can invest in your education, that is going to accelerate you. I didn't have that luxury necessarily, so I invested in like tiny little courses. And then as I grew, I was able to like work with one-on-one coaches and join masterminds. And those by far have been the most transformative experiences for me. But any type of online education you can afford, I think you will not regret if it's from in a leader in your industry that you really trust and admire.
All right. Thank you so much, Mariah, for joining us for this creativity class on how to freelance. And thanks everyone for your questions. We tried to get through as many as we could, but Mariah, I wasn't sure if there's anything you'd like to share before we sign off.
I don't think so. I'm so excited we were able to do this. Thank you all for being here. I loved hanging out with you all. So feel free to DM me on Instagram if you guys have anything else.
Thank you so much. And feel free to follow Mariah on Creatively. And of course, you can also find us at Hello Creatively on Instagram as well. But thank you so much again, Mariah, for your time. This is amazing. And as mentioned, we'll post this recording in 2 to 3 weeks on our YouTube channel. But thank you guys for joining. And thank you again, Mariah, for everything. This was amazing.
I'm so glad. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.